Hello friends, you are most welcome in this video. In this video, we will learn about biography of Mahatma Gandhi, B.ed. sem-2, philosophy of Gandhiji. Mahatma Gandhiji. Let me tell you about Mahatma Gandhiji. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born on 2 October 1869 in Porbandar, a coastal town in present-day Gujarat, India. His father Karamchand Gandhi, 1822 to 1885, who belonged to the Hindu mode community, was the Diwan, yani Prime Minister of Porbandar state, a small princely state in the Kathiawar agency of British India. Friends, then we will see social position about Porbandar. Gandhi was born into the second highest caste in Hindu society, the ruler warriors caste. We will see in this screen Porbandar's picture and Porbandar state into maps of India. Then, as a youth, about 15 years old, he had his schooling in nearby Rajkot, where his father served as the advisor or prime minister to the local ruler. In May 1883, the 13-year-old Mohandas was married to 14-year-old Kasturbai Makhanji in an arranged child marriage, as was the custom in the region. In 1885, when Gandhiji was 15, the couple's first child was born, but survived only a few days. Then, later teen years. On 4th September 1888, less than a month shy of his 19th birthday, Gandhi travelled to London, England, to study law at University College London and to train as a barrister. His time in London, the imperial capital, was influenced by a vow he had made to his mother in the presence of the Jain monk Becharji upon leaving India to observe the Hindu precepts of abstinence from meat, alcohol, and promiscuity. Let me tell you about the London years 1888 to 1891 about Gandhiji. Although Gandhi experimented with adopting English customs, taking dancing lessons, for example, he could not stomach the bland vegetarian food offered by his landlady, and he was always hungry until he found one of London's few vegetarian restaurants. Influenced by Salt's book, he joined the Vegetarian Society, was elected to its executive committee, and started a local bias voter members bias voter chapter. um, 4. Some of the vegetarian he met were members of the Theosophical Society, which had been founded in 1875 to further universal brotherhood, and which was developed to the study of Buddhist and Hindu literature. They encouraged Gandhi to join them in reading the Bhagavad Gita, both in translation as well as in the original. Not having shown a patrick sorry, not having shown a particular interest in religion before, he became interested in religious thought and began to read both Hindus as well as Christian scriptures. Then, friends, let me tell you, attempting to establish a career in India, 1891 to 1893. His attempts at establishing a law practice in Mumbai failed. Later, after failing to secure a part-time job as a high school teacher, he ended up returning to Rajkot to make a modest living drafting uh, petitions for uh, litigants, a business he was forced to close when he ran afoul of a British officer. In his autobiography, he refers to this incident as an unsuccessful attempt to lobby on behalf of his older brother. It was in this climate that in April 1893 he accepted a year long contract from Dada Abdullah and Co., an uh, Indian firm, to a post in the colony of Natal, South Africa, the part of the British Empire. Next, let me tell you about Gandhi in South Africa, 1893 1914. In South Africa, Gandhi faced discriminations directed at Indians. He was thrown off a train at Peter Maritzburg after refusing to move from the first class to a third class coach while holding a valid first class ticket. Traveling further on by stagecoach, he was beaten by a driver for refusing to travel on the footboard to make room for a European passenger. These events were turning points in his life, awakening him to social injustice and influencing his subsequent social activism. Then we will see on the screen um, Mahatma Gandhi and his wife Kasturba mattering in South Africa. Mattering in South Africa, Gandhi and his wife Kasturba in South Africa at 1902. Then let me tell you the South Africa years. Gandhi and his legal colleagues. When Gandhi lived in South Africa, this is the picture about South Africa. Gandhi and his South African friends. Gandhi served in and led an ambulance corps unit in both the Boer War 1899 to 1892 and the Zulu War of 1906. By supporting the British government, Gandhi hoped to gain full citizenship for Indians in South Africa, a goal he did not achieve. Then uh, we will learn about struggle for Indian independence by Mahatma Gandhi ji. Mahatma Gandhi ji had a very hard struggle for Indian independence 1915 to 1945. Then Mahatma Gandhi was returning to India in 1915. In 1915, Gandhi returned from South Africa to live in India. He spoke at the conventions of the Indian National Congress, but was primarily introduced to Indian issues, politics, and the Indian people by Gopal Krishna Gokhale, a respected leader of the Congress party at that time. Gandhi takes a leadership role when comeback of Africa in India. Gandhi takes a leadership role. Gandhi preaching a group of people we will see in photographs. Gandhi in a train interacting with the followers. Role in World War. In April 1918, during the later part of World War I, Gandhi was invited by the Victory to a War conference in Delhi, perhaps to show his support for the empire and helps his case for India's independence. Gandhi agreed to actively recruit Indians for the war efforts. In, in contrast to the Zulu War of 1906 and the outbreak of the World War I in 1914, when he recruited volunteers for the ambulance corps. This time Gandhi attempted to recruit combatants. Between the wars, Gandhi in 1918, where he led the Kheda Satyagraha. In 1918, in Champaran, a district in state of Bihar, tens of thousands of landless serfs, indentured laborers, and poor farmers were forced to grow indigo and other cash crops instead of the food crops necessary for their survival. Gandhi proposed satyagraha, non-violence, mass civil disobedience. While it was strictly non-violent, Gandhi was proposing real action, a real revolt that the oppressed people of India were dying to undertake. His main assault came as he was arrested by police on the charge of creating unrest and was ordered to leave the province. Hundreds of the thousands of people protested and railed outside the jail, police stations, and court demanding his release, which the court unwillingly did. Which the court unwillingly did. Then Gandhiji's tactics. Gandhiji on the Salt March, Gandhi on Dandi March. Gandhi employed non-cooperation, non-violence, and peaceful resistance as his weapons in the struggle against British. In Punjab, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre of civilian by British troops, also known as the Amritsar Massacre, caused deep trauma to the nation, leading to increased public anger and acts of violence. Gandhi criticized both the actions of the British Raj and the retaliatory violence of Indians. When he was arrested, he continued his non-violent protest through hunger strikes. Then Gandhiji called to London for talks. At the Prime Minister's home on Downing Street, London, UK. Gandhi became internationally known, so the British government could not afford to have him harmed or have him die while under arrest. This included dying from a self-imposed hunger strike too. He became a respected world figure without ever doing anything violent. The British couldn't ignore him. They had to talk with him. They had to forced to talk with him. Gandhiji in imprisonment. Gandhiji on a fast and imprisonment. Gandhiji was arrested on 10 March 1922, tried for sedition, and sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. He began his sentences on 18 March 1922. He was released in February 1924 for an appendicitis operations, having served only 2 years. Without Gandhiji's uniting personality, the Indian National Congress began to splinter during his years in prison, splitting into two factions. Furthermore, cooperations among Hindus and Muslims which had been strong at the height, height of the non-violence companion, companion was breaking down. Gandhiji attempt to bridge these differences through many means, including a 3-week fast in the autumn of 1924, but with limited success. Then Jawaharlal Nehru, sitting next to Gandhi at the AICC General Sessions 1942. Independence process. After long deliberations, Gandhi declared that India could not be party to a war ostensibly being fought for democratic freedom. While that freedom was denied to India itself. As the war progressed, Gandhi intensified his demand for independence, drafting a resolutions calling for the British to quit India. This was Gandhiji and the Congress Party most definitive revolt, revolt aimed at securing the British exit from India. Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru worked to prepare for independence. We will see in the pictures on the screen Gandhi Nehru in a happy mood, Gandhiji and Nehruji on serious discussion for attempting independence to India. Then Mahatma Gandhiji addressing a youth gathering. Gandhiji with Jinnah, leader of the Muslim faction in 1944. Gandhi led a very simple life. Gandhi spinning thread, Gandhi reading a newspaper, Mahatma Gandhi's room at Sabarmati ashram known as Hriday Kunj. Much older but still together, Mahatma Gandhi and Kasturba Gandhi. Let me tell you about independence. Independence movement of Gandhiji. When the moment of freedom came on 15 August 1947, Gandhi was on where to be seen in capital, though Nehru and the entire Constituent Assembly were to salute him as the architect of Indian independence, as the father of the nation. Partitioning India into India and Pakistan. Hindu and Sikh refugees had streamed into the capital from what had become Pakistan, and there was much resentment which easily translated into violence against Muslims. It was partly in an attempt to put an end to the killings in Delhi and more generally to the bloodshed following the partition, which may have taken the lives of as many as 1 million people, besides causing the dislocation of no fewer than no fewer than 11 million. The Gandhi that Gandhi was to commence the last fast unto death of his life. The fast was terminated when a representative of all communities signed a statement that they were prepared to live in perfect amity and properly that the lives, property, and faith of the Muslim would be safeguarded. Then Gandhi's response to threats. Gandhi quite characteristically refused additional security, and no one could defy his wish to be allowed to move around unhindered in the unhindered in the early evening hours of 30 January 1948. Gandhi met with India's Deputy Prime Minister and his close associated in the freedom struggle, Vallabhbhai Patel, and then proceeded to his prayers. Gandhi commenced his walk towards the garden where the prayer meeting was held. As he was about to mount the steps of the podium, Gandhi folded his hands and greeted his audience with a namaskar. At the moment, at that moment, a young man came up to him and roughly pushed aside Manu Nathuram Godse, uh, that is a Brahmin Hindu, bent down in the gesture of an obeisance, took a revolver out of his pocket and shot Gandhi 3 times in his chest, and Gandhi was laid down with Hey Ram. Dear friends, uh, there are a biography of Mahatma Gandhi ji. Thank you, Mahatma Gandhi, the father of India, father of our nations. Uh, their biography 1869 to 1948. Thank you.